Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Today, John and I are going to be talking about salespeople and how to attract and hire, develop, and retain salespeople. And a lot of the experience that we've had in doing that, and we're going to just kind of banter back and forth. We have a few notes that each of us want to share, but we don't know what each of us are going to say. So it's a very genuine conversation between frankly, two friends that each have some experience with salespeople, sharing some ideas along those topics, and we hope you find value to it.
Awesome. Hey, Rich, I look forward to it. I know that over the years we've had experience being salespeople, managing salespeople, and there's a lot of key learnings that I think entrepreneurs need to take away from building a world-class sales team. And I think that, I'd love to hear all your thoughts on it, share my thoughts. It's really hard to grow a business if you don't have a real strong sales team. And I've always found too, Rich, that the sales team, the best salesperson on your team needs to be the entrepreneur of that business. It starts right there. Because if you as an entrepreneur can't recruit other salespeople because you can't sell to begin with, you're in big trouble, because salespeople will follow a vision. They'll follow a leader. So really at the root of this, with Entrepreneurs United, we talk to entrepreneurs all the time, but there's a lot of really detailed items when you're building a world-class sales team that need to be considered. How are you paying your sales team? How are they commissioned? How are they bonused? How do you retain them? How do you ensure they have early success? How do you keep them for the long haul? But it all kind of works its way back to a key root of the entrepreneur needs to be dedicated. If they want to grow a business, if you want to be a growing entrepreneur in a growing business, you need to be dedicated to being a salesperson yourself as well, which is very, very hard for some entrepreneurs, because some entrepreneurs consider themselves not the salesperson. And so I'm sure you see that a lot too with people that you work with, where they want to hire their sales team. They don't necessarily lead from the sales side of it. And that's okay, but you need to be comfortable learning and developing your sales ability as well.
You know what's interesting is it's pretty common that the entrepreneur in the business be one of the best salespeople, because one of the things with sales is believing in what you're selling.
Yeah.
Well, it's at least in the early goings of a business, nobody believes more in what's happening in that business than the entrepreneur. And although they may not be the most polished, it might not have the most tips, tricks, words, whatever, on how to sell in terms of the technique, what comes through to the customers and to their team is just their passion for the product or service that they're providing. And that in and of itself, just that passion and the belief in what's happening is magnetic. So I'd say that would be, not that we're going to count tips through the podcast, but to me, that'd be kind of tip number one, that we want to transfer as an entrepreneur to the people who we lead, who are selling, is a genuine passion for what's being sold. Because if they don't have a real passion and believe in what's being sold, believe in the product, believe it's a great solution for a problem that a customer has, believe that after they sell it, who's ever actually backing that up to produce it is going to do it well and to the specs that it's been sold at. If that belief level isn't incredibly high, don't worry about the tactics, worry about the belief, especially to start with. Transfer that.
Yeah, well, this is you used a word in the intro about banter, and we're gonna just banter back and forth. Well, you just walked right into the first banter, and as you said, we don't know what each other we're going to talk about in this conversation. But there's one thing you just said that I want to kind of challenge and kind of come back with you on a little bit, which is they have to have a passion about what they are selling. And if you think of Simon Sinek's Start With Why, I actually think they need to have a passion of why they're actually selling it to begin with. What is the vision of the company? Why does the company exist? I mean, the millennials want to know why. They want to know, where are we going? So, it's one thing to sell a widget. I believe this widget works, therefore I can sell it. That's important. But I also think that the entrepreneur needs to be able to sell their why to salespeople. Why you should come work for my company as opposed to the current company you're working for. And what I've found, Rich, to be very, very critical in finding sales reps, which is going to be one of my first keys to building a world-class sales team, is you need to find world-class salespeople. Well, world-class salespeople are probably making good money. They're already successful. Why are they going to leave their already good job, already making good money, to come work for Rich Hoffman? It's not because of your product necessarily. It's going to be because of you, why your company exists, and ultimately that why, right? That why that your company is there, that's why they'll come work for you, not the product.
I would actually suggest both would be valuable, because you can tell me that what you are running, and I look out my windows in front of me, and I look out and I have some hardscape in
Yep.
front of me that has some rocks underneath a tree. And you could
Mm-hmm.
tell me that you're running a rock selling business, and you could tell me about your why all you want, but I'm sorry, like I'm probably not going to get in a business where I'm selling rocks. I'm not that excited about rocks, and it doesn't matter what your why is. So I agree with you that the why is incredibly important. I would also say you do have to have some passion about what's being sold, that it's something that you can get behind. What you're selling is a representation of who you are and your life's work and your career and who you're employed by. And so I'm with you, and I think we're probably saying the same thing. I'm picking up
Yeah.
your nonverbal of kind of nodding. I think there's both. Like, you can't detest the product or service,
No.
and the why is incredibly important.
Yep. No doubt. And I think we're absolutely saying the same thing. And to the point you're making, sales reps, I don't care what the company why is. That could be the strongest why in the world, but if your product stinks, the world-class salespeople aren't going to stick around. If
Right.
they're going to sell something to lose their reputation, but the company's why is really good, they're not going to stick around. So, let's agree on this one that it is both, right? You need to know why a company's doing what they're doing, how they're doing what they're doing, and what they're actually doing and what they're actually selling. As a Simon Sinek kind of start with why is. But if we're talking to entrepreneurs, which we are, right, in the Entrepreneurs United podcast, why you do what you do and your conviction as an entrepreneur of why you're doing it, and then how you're going to do it and what you're actually going to do to achieve the why is part of your vision. You need to be able to be the world-class sales rep yourself to sell that vision to attract world-class salespeople. So, one of the first things, Rich, that I'd come down when I wrote down, some topics on this one is, I personally think there are 5 keys to building a world-class sales team. And the number one key is actually just finding them to begin with. Way too many entrepreneurs, and I've done this before with very, 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 very little success.
That was like fairies, by the way.
Yeah, that's a lot of varies. Putting a job posting on, back in the day, monster.com, careerbuilder.com, now it's indeed.com, looking for a sales rep. And then shifting through 20 resumes of people that aren't working anywhere else, aren't making enough money anywhere else, that are just looking for another job to confirm their salary, hiring them and having a lot of success. So one of the first things I would like to talk to you about in those 5 keys, number one is, how do you find world-class salespeople? Because in the companies that I've had success in building a world-class sales team, they've all been networked. What has your experience been in that realm?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm not going to say you can't find a good salesperson who isn't part of your network, whether it be in the first, second, third generation, and so on. You can. It's just much more difficult when there's not an endorsement from someone in your network about that person's values and that they'll show up on time. It can be difficult in a series of, whether you have a 1 interview process or a 2 interview process, or you do a ride along in the process of selection. It can be very difficult to actually know how is somebody going to show up for the first couple of months as you really get to know who they are.
Yeah.
But that endorsement from somebody, that recommendation through your network, really helps with that vetting process. One of the things I've also noticed is, instead of networking just in a role play here, I go, "Hey, John, we're growing, we're expanding, we're looking for great salespeople. We pay really well. The hours are flexible. Do you happen to know of anybody who might be interested in having a conversation about a role like that?" That is one way to do it, and that is kind of your first generation networking.
Yep.
You're in my first generation. I know you, and I'm asking who you know.
Yep.
One of the ways that our franchisees in our business can have success is when they actually ask, "Hey, John, who do you think you know who might know really good salespeople?"
Yep.
So they're actually having a conversation to get to that second generation.
Yeah.
And it's not just who do you know, but it's who do you know who might know really good salespeople? Because you might know somebody who runs a car dealership,
Yep.
and you might never think of that person with my question of who might want to talk about the role. Well, the guy running the car dealership that you can think of, he might not want to talk about the role, but he might have a whole bunch of people, and or maybe somebody who's ready to move on in a career that person knows.
Yep.
But you might never think that with the original question I asked. So try to get to that second generation when you're networking.
Yeah, that's awesome, Rich. And I'm going to do to you what sometimes we do to our guests, is just kind of recap it to make sure I got that right. Because I loved what you said, which is in order to find people, there's first generation networking, which is you're asking the person, hey, do you know anybody? And there's second generation networking, where you're asking that person, do you know somebody who might know somebody of this caliber? And you're kind of going, if you think about LinkedIn, there's first connections, second connections. Try and get to those second connections. I love that. I want to go maybe a different angle too on how to find quality people. And I can't stop when I think about finding people, thinking about how long the road is. Think about Manny Pata's podcast when we talked about how do you find investors. We don't go calling around saying, hey, who do you know who's an investor? Because I need an investor. Right? It's the worst time when you need somebody is the worst time to try and find them.
Yeah.
So if you take that concept to yourself as an entrepreneur, when should you be trying to find sales reps? And the only thing I can think of, Rich, and back in our history, and for those listening, if you've never listened to this video and this little short 3-minute clip from Glengarry Glen Ross, where Alec Baldwin puts ABC on the board, right? A always, B closing, right?
A always, BB, C closing.
Exactly, right? Always be closing. And in this context, just change the C to an R or to a find or whatever. Always be recruiting. Always be finding people. And what I would actually be encouraging entrepreneurs to do is, what does your social media presence look like for your company, right? Is your company growing? Are you articulating that? What do salespeople want to get on, right? They want to get on they want to catch the tail of a company that's growing because they know their income can go with it. This company is going national. I could be their lead salesperson. Over here, I'm kind of the third person on the totem pole, like whatever, right? So how are you promoting your why and your company and your growth all the time? And when you do go to a trade show and you meet other sales reps, or you meet sales reps that maybe are in different industries, you are talking about your why, your vision, where you're going, and you're building that relationship with them. You connect with them on LinkedIn. Hey, if anything ever comes up, you ever need anything from me, give me a call. We're growing like crazy. Guess what? When that sales rep may approach you and be like, hey, by the way, I'd love to learn more about your company. That's when you recruit the top salespeople in the world. Not when you are going to them and saying, hey, are you happy in your job? Because I'm looking for another sales rep next week.
Right.
For the first time. I'd much rather go to lunch with them at a trade show, every trade show for the next 3 years. And you can remember very specifically, Rich, in our history, this is over 10 years ago, maybe 15 for that matter, where we were going to trade shows together and we were mingling with the other sales reps of other companies.
Yeah.
And we have a sales rep in our current company today who's one of our top sales reps that you and I met 15 years ago when she was working for another company. And we got to network, spend time, go have some drinks together, hang out, have lunch, get to know each other. And over the years, we're like, this person's a good sales rep. This person builds good relationships. And she called us saying, hey, I love your company. I love the people. I want to come work with you guys. That's how you find the best salespeople in the world, in my opinion.
And to take a step back into about the midway of what you were talking about there's actually a tactic to something you were talking about where it's you network through people, not to people. And what that is if you're talking to someone who's a really good sales rep, you would network through them by asking them, hey, do you know of anybody who would be a match for this type of role? Instead of to them by saying, would you be interested in this type of role? Just by nature, human beings are fairly selfish by nature. We don't have to encourage each other to think of ourselves.
Yeah.
We do that on a regular basis. We do that really well quite often. So when you talk to a really good sales rep, if you are maybe interested in them, but really sales reps know other sales reps, don't ask them, are you interested? Because that may dead the conversation. Ask them, do you know anybody who may be interested? They're automatically going to think in their head, well, is this something I might be interested in? They'll say, oh, well, is there something that we could talk about in that? That actually sounds decent. So go
Sure.
through them instead of to them, and you're going to get better results.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that there's pushing and pulling, right? Pushing is you're asking people, do you know anybody? Do you know anybody else that may know somebody? Are you interested potentially? Like that's a pushing, right? And then there's the pulling is part of what I'm recommending as well, which is to find the best people, try and pull them to attract them, be a magnet where they're like, wow, I would love to work for that company, right? Which is going to lead to a little bit later when I get to step number 5. We're still at number 1. We get to step number 5. Well, how do you retain your top salespeople? Well, how you retain your top salespeople is you treat them great. So when they are at the trade shows, everybody's like, man, look at how well those salespeople are treated. I want to be on that team, right? So there's a whole loop there that we're going to close. So I love that. Number 2, Rich, in my 5 keys to building a world-class sales team is how you recruit them. And I sometimes, wait a minute, John, we just talked about how you recruit them. No, the first part was really how you find candidates. Like it's how you find different people. To me, the recruitment process includes how you're interviewing them, what the compensation package looks like, how you're challenging them when they come on board in their first 90 days. Like to me, the recruitment process is different than identification process. And I think a lot of people fail here. A lot of people will loosely meet the person at a trade show. Hey, I see you're a sales rep. We're looking for a sales rep. Want to come work for us? Great, sounds good. Like start on Monday. Let's go. A lot of problems with that, right? Just because you found a sales rep, you need to identify a little bit more about the type of sales rep they are, what you need, who your ideal customer is. Do they match your ideal customer profile? There's so many different pieces there. And Rich, I don't know anybody in the world who's a better interviewer than you. And I'd love to hear about, how you would look at the recruitment process, right? Just the interview process, what's important there, compensation and what you've seen as methodologies to make sure compensation for sales rep matches what you need them to perform, stuff like that.
That's quite a compliment on you don't know if there's a better interviewer than me. It may mean you need to have a bigger network because there are certainly people better than I. Yeah, good question. On the interview side, couple things. You've got to be aware that how they interview is essentially how they sell. You don't even need to, there are things, and I can talk about it a little bit in the interview process on how to interview well and the difference between interviewing and behavioral interviewing and the values to that. But just observe how they interview is how they sell. Do they write a thank you letter? Do they show up on time? How do they talk to you? At the end of the interview, when you ask, do you have any questions? What type of questions are they asking? Are they asking questions that are more about them? Do they ask any questions about you? How they interview is how they sell. It is a sample of what you're going to get. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't sell better after the interview, but at least the interview gives you a baseline of how they sell. In the actual interview itself, the recommendation that I would have would be find some type of an assessment. We happen to use Caliper.
Yep.
So I'm not going to talk a lot about Caliper, although I would give them the plug that they are excellent as an assessment of personality and preferences and how that may fit in with specific job roles. But find an assessment, any type of assessment, as part of the interview process. Have the candidate take that assessment. The reason why is because the assessment in and of itself has value, but you'd be using that assessment to identify what you want to interview on. So you'd use the assessment to find out, on the Caliper, we look for people that have a high ego drive, for example. That's somebody's inner desire to persuade others to their way of thinking.
Yeah.
We also want people that have a high ego strength, which is your ability to bounce back from rejection. We want people that are assertive and aggressive together. Assertive being putting reality on the table and your preference just to talk in a plain manner about your opinions. Aggressive being generally you have an opinion. So we want high assertive, high aggressive, high ego drive, high ego strength would be great. That's 4 of the 22 preferences on Caliper, for example.
Yep.
So we'll look at that and try to understand how their personality is going to show up as either an expedient or an obstacle in the sales process. We then go into the interview and go, okay, it looks like they have a relatively high ego strength, which again is their ability to bounce back from rejection. Well, in the interview, I'm going to test for that. I'm going to try to discover through behavioral interviewing by talking about the past is really behavioral interviewing. Behavioral interviewing is about understanding someone's past and under the belief that past performance is an indicator of future performance. Instead of a general interview is, hey, what would you do if? Hey, what do you think about? And it's very future based. If you want to do a great interview, and I don't have a book I can recommend to you right now, but it'd be on behavioral interviewing, look that up, find 2, maybe 3 things that you want to test in a behavioral interview. Those 2 or 3 things should come from some type of an assessment that you had them do that you're either testing positive that somebody has this, or you're testing, it might be a problem if they don't. Do they really not have it? And you're looking for data points to back up some of your beliefs.
Yeah, and one of our upcoming guests is Mike Zani from Predictive Index, which is a whole different version of Caliper 2, which he'll probably speak to that a little bit to us, because way too many companies, I know the company you work with, their calipers are required as a part of the hiring process. Way too many entrepreneurs do not use these tools. Why? Because it's going to cost $200. That's a little too much money, or whatever it costs, right? And they'll go ahead and make the hiring mistake that will cost them tens of thousands of dollars versus the $200 for the predictive index or the caliper or whatever it may be. But there's another reason, Rich, that I think it's important to do that from a sales perspective. But I want to come back first to how they interview is how they sell. That is behavioral interviewing. I know people who recruit sales reps that it's basically a check mark or an X if you do not send that thank you letter you talked about. You're going to come to an interview as a sales rep and you're not going to send a thank you letter, then you're going to go meet with our clients and not follow up with them either. You're out. Finished. Over. Not even move on to step number 2. Or I don't care how good your interview was.
Appointment. You do all the things in the sales process, right? They would confirm the appointment. They would show up on time. They would be dressed well, right?
They'll give you a copy of their resume. They're not just going to assume you downloaded it. Everything, right?
Yes.
But you also have to differentiate, to your point, the fakes and the phonies from the real. Because the hardest thing about interviewing sales reps is they must have some degree of sales ability because they want to be a sales rep. And I'll tell you what, I've interviewed sales rep and got BS'd the whole time. Fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. Hired them, paid them a salary to find out 90 days, 6 months, a year later, I got bamboozled, man. They were not what I needed. They were nowhere near a professional sales rep, but I thought they were because they looked well, they dressed well, they had a copy of their resume, they knew how to do the show, but then couldn't follow up with it. Which is why the caliper or the predictive index or something is so important, because you need to know, like there's another component I think those provide to you. There are different types of sales reps. We haven't talked about this. You may have different versions of them, but the way I look at it is you have hunters, you have transactional sales reps, which are not taking orders, but they're selling a customer on a specific order, type of transaction. And then you have farmers that are more account managers that already have a book of business. They're just trying to help maintain and grow that book of business, right? So there's hunters, transactional, and farmers, and there may be more, but those are the 3 that come to mind. You will know almost in that caliper predictive index who they are before they even show up. Do you know what you need? Way too many times I have hired the account manager when I really needed the hunter. That's a problem. Because what's the first thing you do when you hire some sales rep? You give them some accounts, they start doing well with those accounts. They're like, oh, this is great. But then when you need new accounts, they're like, well, I'm not cold calling. Or they tell you they're going to do it, but they don't do it. Or they, whatever, they're not proactive in the approach. So I think the calipers also tell you that. And then the second thing I think the calipers or predictive indexes tell you is, do you know how this person is going to mesh with your ideal customer? Do they connect with your ideal customer profile? You'll know that a little bit by looking at their caliper and how they are as an individual versus what your customer's looking for. So I think there's a bunch of things there that are really strong. Let's change this up, not change the topic, but in the recruitment phase, let's just talk for a second, entrepreneurs, about compensation plans. Because boy, have I messed this one up many, many times, right? We're 100% commission, so I'm not going to pay you anything. Go get it yourself. To I'm going to pay you way too much money to give you way too much security and a smaller commission, and they don't sell anything. What do you see as the right blend to motivate the right sales reps? And maybe it's different based on, are they a hunter or a transactional or a farmer, but what have you seen as the best methodologies for companies in the compensation side of things to attract the best? Because we're talking about attracting the best, of building a world-class, not the weakest, not the cheapest, the world-class sales team. How can you do that? Because if you pay them way too much money, you may blow your budget. So what's the right way for entrepreneurs to handle that?
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, and you're looking at the sales rep as both an expense and a revenue.
Yeah.
Because they're going to cost money and they're going to bring in money. So the idea is you want to set a salary as low as you can, so there's some level of security. And I say as low as you can, so that if they don't actually perform, you're limiting your expense. And in exchange for having a relatively low salary, you would want to pay them a slightly higher commission.
Sure.
The higher you go up on salary, the lower you should have the upside be on the commission. Now, there's a debate, and I think Daniel Pink has a whole video on bonuses and commission and what actually motivates people these days. And there's a whole debate on, does being on straight commission actually motivate people or not to produce more? And I'm not going to, we may post that as part of what we do. I'll send that video over and I'll give the link. It's a 10-minute kind of infographic video or a whiteboard animation. But part of the idea behind that is you want to pay them enough to be able to be secure on the salary, but you don't want to pay them so much that they won't perform.
Yep.
And I will tell you, in my experience, salespeople are motivated by commissions. They will do more because they attach money to it, but they'll also do more. And maybe this is a good transition into a next topic, John, on how to develop top producers.
Yeah.
That they are also motivated by competition. So it's not just money, but it's a competition against other sales reps. Or if you don't have other sales reps, you would kind of look in the industry on where your company is and in that sector and so forth. And they're going to want to beat other people just in their numbers for recognition, but also in their numbers that they want to be the highest paid that they possibly can. So we found that commission does matter, but there's some level of a blend that includes a lower salary so you don't get hurt if they're not a performer.
Yeah. So, in this recent episode we had with Jeffrey Unger, we talked about what is your capital strategy.
Yes.
Well, way too many entrepreneurs, don't know their capital strategy, as we learned with Jeffrey. But number two is they don't really know how to measure the risk reward return on investment of hiring salespeople. And it's very difficult because you do the math in your head. Go, well, I'm giving them X in salary and load and benefits and 401k, and then there's commission. How much do they need to sell in order to pay for themselves? And when do I need them to hit their ROI? And from my experience, we've always looked at about a year, but it depends on what business you're in. In transactional businesses, you need them to ROI right away because they need to sell right away. So, for example, in CertaPro, where they're most likely doing painting estimates, if you're a franchisee and you're hiring sales reps, like that sales rep needs to be able to go sell the paint job today, not a year from now. But if you're in a B2B sales environment where you're selling software, you're selling larger products and goods, it could be 6 months to a year before your sales rep makes their first sale, right? So you really need to know what your ROI calendar is on this particular sales rep. That's really important. And I would agree with you. You got to pay them enough to make it worth their while, but not too much, because you need to motivate them on the other side. And so I think that most sales reps have a survival level. Like, I need to pay my mortgage, I need to pay my bills, and that tells you a lot about their lifestyle too. Because sometimes sales reps live on the edge of their means, right? If they make more money, they spend more money. Is a typical sales rep habit, unfortunately. But they get hungry by, I want to make more money so I can spend more money. And so what I've typically found entrepreneurs really, really struggle with is giving too much on the upside. And boy, have I caught myself there way too often. And when I changed it, Rich, it changed the trajectory and growth of companies I've been involved with. Way too many times, entrepreneurs are like, look, I'm going to give you this salary, right? And they're comfortable with the salary. And then they're like, but your commission is going to be capped at, name the percent. And the sales rep was like, well, wait a minute. So if I sell $10 million a year, you're going to pay me, I'm just using numbers, 10 million, you're going to give me 3% commission. If I sell 5%, you're going to give me 5 million, you're going to give me 3% commission. But is there a way for me to make more? And the entrepreneur's like, no, like, this is it. Like, whatever. And I'm just using that as an example. When I took the ceiling off and said, you can make as much money as you possibly want because I'm going to give you an escalator. As the company makes more money, you're going to make more money. So as the return on investment on you goes higher, you can make more money. And they realize they can be the highest paid person in the company, including the entrepreneur. Holy moly. Now you can attract the world-class salespeople. And when they kill it, your company's going to kill it. They don't have equity in the company. That is their equity. It's their growth. So way too many times I was a cheap ass, excuse my language, on commissions because I didn't want to give too much up. Holy moly, that was a big mistake. If you're going to attract world-class salespeople, take the ceiling off. Give them the safety and security of a reasonable salary and let them go. I have a few more topics on that, but I'd love to get your thoughts on that because I know you've probably seen it a bunch of different ways as well.
I have two concepts to fire back to you. One is one of the things you're talking about in taking the ceiling off. We've also seen some of our franchisees do a step up. So the first 750,000 in our business in painting that is sold and produced is at a certain percentage.
Yep.
The next 500,000 is at a different percentage. So with these buckets and a step up is also a way to be able to motivate people because as they step up, you can step up that percentage of commission.
Yep.
Another concept I'll fire back to you is we work with our franchise owners on creating what we call trigger plans. Mm-hmm. And in a down economy or when things aren't going great, we would encourage them to create a good, bad, and ugly plan that are 3 separate financial plans that say, and then the triggers are in there and it says, if we don't sell X amount by X date, what are you going to do to save revenue? And unfortunately, sometimes that comes down to laying people off or making other decisions about the office and so forth. In an up economy, like right now, the entire country is experiencing an economic wave. And instead of a good, bad, ugly plan, we do a good, better, best plan. Yep. And the triggers then, instead of triggering down on expenses to save on EBITDA, actually triggering up on expenses to take advantage of the economic wave. So it would be, okay, where do you need to be at to hire the next sales rep? Yep. Where do you need to be by when? So the use of triggers has been really important with the scaling up and down of sales reps.
Yeah, no, I love that. There's something else that you mentioned too in the recruiting process, and it is a good segue to the step number 3 as well, which is the competition element, when you're recruiting. And what I found, step number 3 for me and keys to building a world-class sales team is how you train them to get early success. And there's a concept I have that also plays back to number 2, which is the recruiting, which also plays back to number 1, which is how you find sales reps. I love recruiting in 2s or 3s. Love it. Love it. Why? Because sales reps are competitive. They'll learn from each other. They'll push each other. They'll drive each other, especially if they have a good culture. They're not really eating each other's food, but they're kind of helping each other. But they also know, wait a minute, I want to be the number 1 sales rep in the first month. No, wait, I want to, and if you can challenge them, which goes back to the recruiting process. One last thing on the recruiting process, then I'll go to the training piece is, when you recruit people in 2s and you can sit down and go, Rich, we're really excited about your, we've done the interviews. We really love to bring you on board. But, I was going to bring 1 person on board. I think I'm going to bring a couple on board now because there's so many good candidates and we really want to take our company to the next level. Like, I'm curious, do you think that if I bring on 2 or 3, where do you think you're going to fit in those 2 to 3? Do you think you're going to be the top sales rep after the first year? Middle? Where do you think you're going to be? What do you think they're going to say? Of course. Oh no, are you kidding me? I'm going to be the number one. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see. I'm bringing on some really good people, Rich. I'm excited. This is a challenge between me and you. 20 push-ups, beer, whatever. Why don't you why don't we do a little like friendly, you buy me dinner, I'll buy you dinner. See if whatever. If you're not first, and you give them that challenge in the interview process. Just when you're about to offer them the job and bring them on board, they come out like Hulk Hogan, man. They're like, "Whoa, like, let's go," right? And then you put that team together. And here's what's important with that in the training and getting them up to speed, which is key number 3. Having a team, it's more efficient to train 3 people than 1. So for you as an entrepreneur, it makes a ton of sense. The entrepreneur may be sitting here going, "Oh, I can't afford to bring 3 people on at the same time." You're right, because it's an expense that's trying to generate revenue. I understand. But guess what the benefit is of it? Of the 3, one's going to kill it, one's going to be okay, and one's going to crap the bed. That's just the law of the averages, right? If all 3 kill it, Rich, the return on investment's off the charts. You made a huge win. Chances are, of the 3, one of them really, did a good job over you on the recruiting process. Maybe they're a maverick that doesn't fit your culture. You can get them out right away because you got 2 others. What's the risk? The risk is all 3 kill it. If all 3 kill it, your return on investment profile on how much you're investing to the return should be off the charts. Great success. If all 3 crap the bed, well, you should review your recruiting process and how you're trying to find them. I love recruiting at 3s. If you only recruit 1, what do you have? Well, I spent all this time recruiting 1. I got 1. I don't want to give up on that 1. I have to send them up to do estimates or whatever that you're doing as a job. You're stuck. Let them earn it. Let them be the competitive, like, I'm going to show you I'm number 1. I want to be a part of this company. To me, and getting them up to speed right away, which is key number 3, and training, which is you can train them together, they can learn from each other, and they can build a little culture as like the rookie team that's coming into the sales group. Huge success when I did it that way. Not so good when I did them onesie, twosies along the way.
Yeah, in that, I would separate you're talking about training and getting early wins. I would just separate the difference between training and coaching.
Yep.
Training being, here's how we do it around here. Here's the formula and the mold. Go do that. Coaching being, let me go get in the field and observe you doing it that way so that I could give you feedback on how you could do it your way and our process better.
Yep.
So when you get in the field and do coaching, I have a couple of tips for people who are in the field doing coaching.
Love it.
One thing is, before you go observe an event, ask the person who you're coaching, who's the learner, what is it that you're really going to challenge yourself with in this particular event? You'd set like an event goal. Yep. So I'm going to really focus on asking for the order or asking for the order multiple times. I'm really going to focus on needs related questions. I'm really going to focus on my ability to build rapport. So you would find something that your learner wants or the person you're coaching wants to focus on in that event.
Yep.
You go through the event, you observe what they're doing. You generally do not jump in to save the sale because you're going to a coaching event to be able to increase their skill. Not necessarily to be able to save a sale necessarily in that particular job. Yep. If you're jumping in to save a sale, it's for the exclusive purpose of transferring skill.
Yep.
At the end of that event, so you leave that particular sales process, that interaction with the person who you are coaching, you check in as a coach with them. How do you feel like you did there? What are some areas to continue? What'd you do well? What are some areas to improve? What do you think you should be doing differently? Mm-hmm. Then as the coach, you would reflect back your thoughts. Hey, John, here's what I thought you did really well. Absolutely. You showed up, you smiled, your facial expressions were terrific. You built great rapport. And here are some areas to improve, John. When we sat down, there was just an awkward, uncomfortable silence when you were calculating some numbers. You may want to check in with the person and say, hey, I'm going to be calculating some numbers. Can you just give me a second? Or you're welcome to look at my sales brochure while I'm doing this. You may want to do that next time, John, to make it more comfortable for your customer. That's an example of an area to improve and a bit of a role play on how that might go down.
Yeah.
If you can put as a coach, your 2 to 3 areas to continue, in 2 to 3 areas to improve in writing, typically in an email, all the better. Because then on your next event that you go out with that particular sales rep, you're going to want to revisit with them. Hey, let's come back to the feedback that we had on the last one. Here's some things that were to continue. Here's some things to improve. What do you want to do as a goal on this one? Usually the goal on the next one is going to be the areas to improve that you gave them last time.
Yep.
You repeat that cycle again. Put it in writing makes all the difference because you can go back and reference it and you're not going off of memory.
Yeah, which is a discipline, Rich. It's a discipline. Way too entrepreneurs are running so fast, got other fires, other problems, operational issues. They hire the sales rep, say, hey, here's all the information, good luck. And you can't train and be involved in getting early success, which early success for building a world-class sales team, getting that sales rep who you found appropriately, recruited appropriately, now you're in this training process, you have to get them early wins. You got to show them that this product can be sold or this service can be sold, and we can get there quickly. And there's an acronym for it, Rich. You probably remember it. I unfortunately don't, but it's, I'm going to show you, then you're going to show me, then I'm going to show you again, and then you're going to show me, and then what is that again? You remember?
Duragi. That was a risk in our podcast, by the way, if I didn't happen to remember that.
Yeah, but you remember this stuff. What is it?
It's Duragi, Doragi. So you would demonstrate, observe, re-demonstrate, set a goal, and then inspect. So that would be the process that's recommended to do coaching is you're going to demonstrate it as the coach.
Yep.
You're going to observe them do it, your learner. You're going to re-demonstrate it. You're going to set a goal with them on an area within that technique that you were trying to transfer. They're going to do it again, and ultimately you're going to inspect that together on how it went.
Did you say there was an A in there? D-O-R-A-G-I or just D-O-R-G-I?
D-O-R-A-G-I. I think I'm missing a step in there, actually. D-O-R-A-G-I. I'll have to look it up here.
So demonstrate, observe, re-demonstrate. What's the A, right? Okay. Well, it's D-O-R-G-I for today's episode, and we'll figure out the A and bring it back. But either way, to your point, as the entrepreneur or as the sales manager, you got to demonstrate the success, right? There's no better thing than as an entrepreneur sales manager going on the first sales call or taking the first sales call or whatever it is with your new sales rep and selling it and going, look how easy that was. So, I could do this, right? And then they go do it and they fall on their face. And then you re-demonstrate it again, and then they get it, and then they kind of move forward. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. But getting on that,
I just looked up real quick. The A is assign a task.
Assign a task. Okay.
So you're going from you demonstrating, observe them do it, re-demonstrate it, assign a task or a part of something in the process, and set a goal.
Yep.
And inspect how it went.
Yep. Love it. And I would say at this particular stage, right, you should keep doing Duragi until they're experiencing success in the sales process. And if that means that you got to go partially sell one with them to get them the success, you got to get them success. See, you got to unleash that. Oh, I get it now. Now I know how to sell this vacuum cleaner. You throw some stuff on the ground, you vacuum it up. I get it. They see how the vacuum works, and we sell one. Okay, I got it, right? You got to get them that early success right away. But then, Rich, there's kind of this interesting phase, right? You got them trained, they're getting some early success, but now they're off on their own. I think step number 4 in building a world-class sales team is you got to turn them into a top producer. And there's a few things that I think play into everything we just talked about again. They need to want to be a top producer. So how you're finding and recruiting your people. Your compensation plan's got to motivate them to go, oh my gosh, I want to be there, right? And that could be either on the record, on the monthly, list of sales reps ranked in order. Are you number 10 or are you number 1? If you're not ranking your sales reps and publishing that, shame on you for not putting that out there, right? But it's also in the compensation plan to come back to that a little bit. As an example, If you know as a sales rep, if you bring in $2 million a year, you're going to make 100,000, for lack of a better example. I'm just pulling this out of the air.
Sure.
How much would you be making if you were selling $10 million instead of $2 million? Well, that's 5 times, right? So maybe I'm making an additional 400,000 or whatever it is, right? If you're looking on the sheet of the sales reps of the year, and you see your top dog in the company doing $15 million or $10 million or $8 million, and you know what the compensation structure is, you can do the math and go, holy cow, I can buy that new house or that boat or this or that. And maybe these are grandiose numbers, but either way, you need to be able to show them the vision of what it means to be the top dog in this company. And once you create that identification, everybody else can go, oh, you can achieve massive success here. There is no ceiling to compensation potentially. Like the more I sell, the more I can do, the better I can make myself, like the company. And then you help them get there through a few other strategies. Continuing to provide them with opportunity. One of the biggest things I see way too much is, Rich, you're making too much money right now, so we're going to reassign some of your accounts to Jim, Bob, and Susie, and you're going to go focus on more accounts. So I know that you're selling 2 million, but we're going to actually take $1 million away. So now you're back to $1 million, and now you got to go sell another $1 million to keep your job and make the same income. Holy cow. Try and build a world-class sales team that way, Rich. Entrepreneurs do that. I did that. That's not the way to do it. You lose those people, demotivated. Why not challenge them? Keep your 2 million, go get 2 million more. And here's how I'm going to challenge you. And here's what the incentive is. And here's what all that kind of stuff. Way too many times we're, penny wise, dollar foolish on the sales side. But if you want to build a world-class sales team, you got to unleash them.
I think there are 2 access points on the developing a top producer when you were talking about vision earlier. One of them you touched on, which is how much more money you can make if you sold more. I think to go one level deeper than that, it's something that we do with our residential and commercial sales reps, is to have them actually envision, what are you doing with the money? What would that mean to your family? What would that mean to your community? How much money could you give away to a charity? What would you actually do? Like, it's not about our vision as the entrepreneur. It's actually about their vision on what they would do with it. Once they start envisioning what they would do with it, there's this perceived sense of loss when they aren't doing that. So that's one thing. The other access point is not just about money, not just about what can you buy, but it's, if you really believe, and it's circling back to the beginning of the podcast, John, if you really believe in your product or service and you're really passionate about it, how many people could you help? And how meaningful would that be? So I think it's important to hit at least both angles, and there may be more angles than that, but at least both of those angles is, what's the vision of what you could actually do with that money that is really attaching meaning to it instead of just a dollar number? And then what could you do in the way of helping people with this? Everything we sell is a solution to a problem the customer has. We talked about that on a recent podcast we had. Yeah. It's got to be a big enough solution to a problem somebody has. How many people are you going to help with your solution? And how meaningful would that be to you to know you made that type of impact with that many people?
Yeah. Rich, that's huge. And I love how you brought that up. I mean, what you're talking about, this plays directly into your biggest strength in the world, right? You're a leadership development coach, right? And ultimately for your company, for people. And what you talked about is the entrepreneur really understanding what their why is.
Yes.
What is your why? And we talked to Jonathan from Penji the other day, and he's like, in our interview process, we want to know what their why is, what they're doing. And if you understand their why, and you also combine that with sales reps like to spend money, they like to live on that edge, well, maybe they have debt. Maybe the last job didn't work so well. They put themselves in a little bit of trouble. Maybe they want to buy the boat. Maybe it's opportunistic. They want to buy a new car for their wife. Maybe they have parents they need to take care of. Whatever it may be. If you don't know what your sales rep's why is, Rich, shame on you. Shame. Because you're supposed to be their coach. And if you have a sales rep who has a big enough why, and you help them through success and coaching and development get to that why, You just hit number 5, retention. 5. The 5 keys to building a world-class sales team. Number 5 is retention. As an entrepreneur, if you know their why, and you push them and you challenge them and you call them out when they miss their goal, not because of your company, you're calling them on missing their goal because of their why. Game changer. Game changer. Rich, you missed your sales goals, therefore our company missed our monthly budget, therefore you suck, is one approach. Rich, you missed your sales goal, you're not going to make that commission check you were looking for. You needed that commission check for your daughter's braces. I don't know what it is. That's what your goal was. Dude, that's unacceptable. How are we going to fix that? It's a totally different conversation.
Yes.
Right?
And I find that people will allow you to really hold them accountable to the goals that they set for themselves. And you don't want to be aggressive with people and holding accountability, but it's literally going, wow, that must really hurt you that you didn't make the money you wanted for the vacation you were going to take your family on. I want to help you be able to make that up. And the way I'm going to help you is we're going to go on some more ride-alongs, do some more coaching events. Like, what do you feel like you need help with? What happened there? Why didn't you hit? Because that not only has an impact to the company, but I know it has an impact to you. And frankly, I care about both the company and you very deeply. I'll tell you, John, one of the things in retaining people, particularly when you're talking about top producers, that I was told, if you picture a graph of some sort, and there's a particular line that somebody's expenses are at in order to maintain their lifestyle. So they've got their house payment or rent, or they've got their car payment, they've got food, entertainment, all these things. So there's a particular line of what that is, whatever that dollar amount is.
Yep.
What you find is sales reps will increase their income to generally hit that line.
Yep.
What you talked about is if they go up in income, generally that line goes up, that they find a way to spend the money.
Yep.
So a question that I wrestled with years ago was, so we have franchise owners who are making enough money for themselves. Their people are making enough money. How do we help them get motivated to be able to do more for themselves, for their people, for the overall company? How do we encourage them to do more and do that in a really ethical way? Well, the unethical way to do it is encourage them to get overheaded up in their personal expenses so they have to go out and sell more. Well, that's not a great way to work with people, and it's a bit manipulative, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Here's the best way I found to do it. Talk to them about retirement planning.
Absolutely.
Send them to a financial planner. Talk to them about having an emergency fund.
Yep.
Talk to them about saving money, having retained earnings in your business so that when a downturn comes, your business is still secure. When you can up that line, not by burdening them with debt and obligation, but you up that line through savings, and now they're going to want to continue to sell more to hit that savings line, because making more money is attached to retirement, or it's attached to meaning, or it's attached to their retained earnings. Like they're not just doing it because they want to grow. They're doing it because there's purpose to it now, but the purpose is savings. So you're not hurting them if they don't sell as much. You're not putting them or their business at risk.
That's right. Yeah, that's huge, Rich. And I think that goes back to being a mentor, coach, understanding what their why is. It could be a college kid fund. It could be retirement. It could be a whole bunch of other things, which really understanding their why and guiding them in the proper direction. There's always a why. A sales rep will always have a why to make more money. Find the right ones, right, that are really going to motivate them and be purposeful in their lives is really, really important. And listen, there's a whole bunch of other things to retention that has nothing to do with sales rep, right? Having a good culture, being a good company, having a product and service that's really great, having a good sales team culture, not just a culture, but a sales team culture. Way too many cultures of sales teams is they're all eating each other's food and they're all fighting and leads and all that. Like, you have to have a good sales team culture because people want to enjoy working with their sales team, which is get together. Salespeople want to get together with their sales team more often than maybe the operations people do, because the operations people are always together, working together, handling problems together. The salespeople like getting together at the conference and having a team dinner. or having a sales meeting together as a group and talking about learnings and how they can feed off each other. You have to have all of that stuff. And ultimately, though, one of my biggest lessons in retention of sales rep is don't pigeonhole them. And I have several examples of this, but let's use the best one we've had in our entire year of podcasting together. Episode number 1. Mike Stone was a residential sales rep for college pro painters, became a residential sales rep for Certa pro painters, and I'll skip all the steps in between to save everybody time. He's now the CEO of Certa pro painters, a very, very large, the largest company, painting company in North America, because the company continued to empower him to grow and not be, no, you're just a sales rep. I had that exact same situation happen in one of our other companies where our whale hunter sales rep, Mike Hirsch, who you know, right, became the CEO of the company. And I can remember, Rich, I remember this day when he said to me, he said, hey, I'm more than just a sales rep. I can actually do this job too. I can help manage the company. And I only knew him as a sales rep. I knew him as a very successful sales rep, a whale hunter of a sales rep, but I had him in my mind pigeonholed as to, no, you're the sales guy. And I'll never forget when he challenged me and I took him up on that opportunity and what happened to the company since. Now you had the whale hunter sales guy who's proving himself as an operations person because his why was so deep and the company's sales went through the roof. Because now he was recruiting other sales reps to build the company along with him and ultimately, replace himself as the top sales dog to a certain degree with other people that he was able to lead and manage. You got to retain your top people, whether they just want to be sales, that's fine, or they want to grow in other avenues. Once you find a winner in this area, keep developing them. Because if I'm a sales rep right now in CertaPro and the CEO of the company started where I'm at, are you kidding me? What's the opportunity? Go kill it.
Right. To dovetail the not pigeonholing your people into a particular role, there's another matrix I'm thinking of that has your skill level and your sense of challenge with your work. What you want to do is work with a sales rep to increase their skill level so that they can take on more challenge to the point where their skill level actually exceeds a level of challenge that they have today or that they're actually working on as they have more skill. And whether that skill be specifically in sales or that skill may be in doing other functions in the business, you want to develop people to the point that their skill supersedes their level of challenge so they're ready for the next step in their career. I'm going to give, and this is the last thing I've got in my notes, John, I'm going to give a couple of recommendations on some resources if people want to help develop their salespeople, because I know there are entrepreneurs out there that go, I'm not the best salesperson in the world. I don't know all the ways to be able to teach people to be a better salesperson.
Yep.
So here are a couple of books and a couple of resources. There's a book by Jeffrey Gitmer called The Little Red Book of Selling. Excellent book. I'd recommend all salespeople read it. I'd recommend How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's a classic, and all sales reps should read that. One that we used, it was probably in the probably 2013 or so, is The Art of Successful In-Home Selling. With our business, we do in-home selling. It's by Dave Yoho. Dave Yoho is excellent, and he breaks down a formula on the art of successful in-home selling. Then the last one is, if your business is in B2B sales, is The New Strategic Selling by Miller Hyman. That one is also excellent, and it has a matrix of 4 different types of buyers to be able to break down in B2B sales. You actually have 4 different people who you need to serve instead of just one, where it's more of like a product or service sales in home. You're dealing with the decision makers right in front of you. Sometimes in B2B sales, the decision makers can be elusive, and that The New Strategic Selling by Miller Hyman breaks down who are the 4 different types of buyers.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I think that I heard a lot of good things about the new strategic selling. I hadn't read it yet, so I appreciate you bringing that up. And as always, we can always count on you for good book recommendations. So I really appreciate that. And I think, Rich, I want to come back to where I started on this conversation. As the entrepreneur, you have to be your company's best sales rep. That doesn't mean you have to be your company's best painting estimate sales rep or your company's best software sales rep. You have to be your company's best sales rep. You need to be able to sell your why and your vision in order to achieve these 5 keys. And again, just to repeat, the 5 keys that we identified today is you got to find sales reps all the time. Always be seeking out, building relationships for the long haul.
ABR.
2, sorry?
ABR.
ABR. Always BBR recruiting. Yes. Always be recruiting. So number 1, find them. Number 2, you got to recruit them the right way. Interview them the right way. Make sure their profile matches exactly what you're looking for. And if possible, bring them in pairs. Don't just recruit one. Bring a couple in at the same time. That will really help you. Number 3, you got to train them correctly, and you got to get them some early wins. And we talked about all the coaching methodologies and Duragi and how you got to really guide them in that path. Number 4 is turn them into top producers. Challenge them, show them the opportunity, but know their why. Know their why and help them get there and hold them accountable to their why. Go to dinner with their family and tell their family, we're going to go get this why, right? Really get engaged in that. And number 5, retain them. Top producers want more opportunities. Keep driving them and growing and building with them. You do those 5 keys, you'll build a world-class sales